Here we are. Here we are.
Hey, Andy.
Hey, Bambos. Can you believe it? We took 2 days off. This was a 2-day holiday.
Yeah.
It kind of
felt weird.
Felt weird, didn't it? Like, kind of like what do we do if we don't have this as instead of a part of each day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every day, guys, we're here.
Every day. Like it or not, we're like a bad penny. We're going to keep showing up. Today, we are on air with Bill Apablasa, and we are going to be discussing Elder's Wisdom. Bambo said he wasn't really excited about this topic, but I swear to you, it'll be interesting.
On
A Wonderful Chaos. So, Bambos, today, you asked me before we began, is this another one of your high school friends?
Yes.
Do I have to sit through another high school reunion? That's kind of what you never say
exactly,
it.
That's exactly what I said.
You never say it directly, I don't think. You always intimate that, like, really? Again? And I'm going to up the ante this time for you, Bambos. This is not a high school colleague. It's a high school teacher.
Oh, I think I know who.
Yes.
We've talked
about him a few times. And why I've talked about it, first of all, I would have to say of all the teachers I had, I would think my favorite. I would have to say he was my favorite teacher. And I also would say I probably have to like apologize to him a few times over. I don't know if he thinks I should apologize, but I sure as hell think I should apologize.
How did you get him on?
I don't know, actually. I know he didn't want to come on. Like, he's one of these people that just is hard to reach. But I said, I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna find an angle and I'm gonna pull him on the damn show.
Love
and
it.
I mean, I think the quintessential worst moment of my time with him was, which I mentioned it, I think on air the last time, was when I was in the car because I ran for student council with the woman that we had on last week. I lost, but my campaign was really good. Like, it was really good.
We're gonna ask if it was really good. Like, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna
say, when I say it was really good, I really meant to say it was really bad. Like, it was a Catholic school, and I ran on this sort of sexual innuendos. So I said, Andy has a long ... list of accomplishments. And then I got pulled into the principal's office, Andy, come on. And then the next week I put on, Andy can keep it up all year round. And then I got nailed again. And then I said, and then the last one was, Andy won't leave you hanging. He'll give you a fair shake.
Oh, jeez.
So basically, I was like just saying, screw this Catholic thing. I'm enjoying. But strangely, somehow they said, you lost the election, but there's something about you that we're going to cultivate because you've got something going on. And then they made a new role that was called the communications something or other.
Yeah.
And then I was on the student council. I hadn't won it, but they put me on anyways. And Bill Apablasa, was in charge of that student council. And he was the sweetest, nicest guy. He has one of the best laughs of any human being I've ever heard in my life. Like, when he laughs, you almost are forced to laugh. That's how great his laugh is.
Let's make him laugh.
Yeah, we'll have to at some point. And then I remember one of my worst moments was when we were driving in the car to some retreat, and we're all in the car. It was me in the backseat with 6 or 7 of student council members. He in the front with his wife, Terry.
Yeah.
And I then said, I can't imagine the two of you having sex.
What a dick.
And you know what the funny thing was is I didn't even feel it to be half as bad as it was. It was an honest feeling because he's such an adorable teddy bear that it really was it was an honest statement. And as a teacher, he could have just kicked me, but somehow he just knew that this is Andy. He has his own weird way and he just let it be. He put me on the speaker for a week at school, and then they kicked me off because I was just too far-fetched. So we haven't spoken in years. I haven't seen him in certainly 20 some odd years, and finally we got him on. I know he's so active and interested in Elder's Wisdom that I wanted him in because I've also been really interested in Elder's Wisdom. because elders' wisdom for me is it's always this question I've sat with is at some point in life you start seeing things differently through the lens of I have less years ahead of me than behind me.
Yeah.
And when you have that lens, you look at things so differently. You don't get lost in the minutia of nonsense anymore. You look everything through the lens of, wow, if this were my last day, is this the way I really want to be spending it? And that insight, especially for individuals that are still in this, I need to get somewhere, I need to achieve something, I want to succeed. Like when you're interacting with those people, they don't understand the other paradigm of being in the world, just being at peace with what is. So I would love to sort of dig into that. He's done Elders Wisdom courses. Chris Conley is someone who does a lot with Elders Wisdom. He has an Elders Wisdom Academy in Baja, Mexico, I believe. And that's a kind of people who have just, say, wealthy people that have made a lot of money in San Francisco and Silicon Valley. They go to say, what do I want to do with the next half of my life?
Wow.
And he also...
And they go to this education system.
They go to this education. It's actually a location just based for Elders Wisdom, as far as I've seen from it. And Bill himself, he has his own website that's called Oxygen Buzz, Buzz, and he posts articles on a fairly regular basis, which touch upon people as they go into the second half of life, like how they want to live it, what are the things that are important, and how to do it in a way that's, say, more grounded to what you really wanted to do, maybe the first half of your life, but you didn't do because you needed money and stability and all the other things. So that's what he's all about.
When is the second part of life happening?
That's a good question. We'll have to ask him. I mean, it might start different times for different people.
Okay. Bill, welcome.
Thank you.
How
Let me start by saying, Bombos, I'm here as your friend, okay? I am here as your friend. This isn't an Andy hour, okay? You are the main person here for me, okay?
Right.
Thank you for that introduction.
Yeah.
I wanted to tell that story of you in the backseat.
Did you remember it?
Yes. Oh, I did remember it. And
I'd love to hear your version.
Well, it was pretty much the same version of, I can't imagine, but he would always go a step further than that, like almost inferring, like without inferring it, almost inferring like he wants a few details. I'm not going to go any further than that. And it was just like, oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah, he would know how to provoke people,
How did you put up with him?
Well, you know what? It was kind of like, that's what a school needs. I mean, that's, Andy had an ability. It was commissioner of publicity, I think.
Oh, that was commissioner of publicity. Yes.
Yeah. I don't remember anything. I have the worst memory ever. Ask me to look back, I just, forget about it. But I do remember that. And it's the kind of thing that, you want somebody up there, in front of the student body who can get their attention, who immediately has like street creds. People like them. They'll listen to them. So they get information across, but they also make it fun. So you want someone like him. You absolutely want someone. But the double-edged sword is that they're also loose cannon. And so they can go in any direction. So it was always kind of like, okay, that was a great idea, but just please, I don't want to get fired. I don't want to get
How old were you?
I was 16, 17, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was I'm only 10 years older.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I mean, when you think about it now, then I was probably 27.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is a big difference then. It's not a big difference now. 60, 50, same thing. It's pretty much, So, yeah, Andy was, I still have, those retreats, we had leadership retreats went out. I still have images. Can I say this online?
Of course.
I still have images. We're at this cabin and we are, it's like, we're having group meetings. What are we going to do this year? And, we're talking about, okay, we're going to have this rally and this rally, all this strategic planning. And then all of a sudden, Andy and Pat are missing. And all of a sudden, we're in this cabin that we rented, so it's somebody else's cabin, and so all of a sudden, Andy and Pat come down, and they're wearing underwear that they found in somebody's drawer up there that must have been like 7 or 8 years old. It was just like tiny little underwear they're walking down in. And it was just like, oh my God. I mean, today I would have been fired for that kind of
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we were living our full expression at 16 years old. Yeah. In a system that was a little bit more structured than was suitable for our, excitement. Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't politically correct, and it wasn't like, but
we couldn't get away with that today for sure.
You could not.
No. Would you? I would wonder if you would even want to be in a system like that yourself, managing it, knowing how free spirited you are.
Yeah, because you know what? I think there's the world needs free spirits everywhere, even in boxes. I think that's more important in a box as well. And you make your own little world. I mean, even in there was a system, but like, you remember our little office down there, down in the basement? It was sort of a separate little world. And it's kind of like the real world. You have to sort of play the game out there. We're going to do a rally. It's 45 minutes. You can go this far for this group. Who's the audience? It's who's the audience. It's a student of your peers, but there's also 50 faculty in the background. That's part of it. So you have to sort of play to them. So it's kind of like, it was a good lesson. It was a real life lesson, I thought.
I think you probably managed me as well as anyone could, because you always got you always got the best out of me without having to like ever reprimand me, or it would like if I got kicked off the radio thing or whatever they had, the morning announcements. When I got kicked off, like you were kind of like, Andy, you tried. It was almost like you didn't bawl me out. You just said, Andy, it was you could have done. You didn't have to say.
It was a great group, and selfishly, it serves my purpose because the rallies are really good.
Yeah,
you have people are enthused, students love it. And whether an administration admits it or not, they like that energy.
Yeah,
they like it to the point, and then then they get scared, or somebody, the PC police calls in, or a parent calls in, and then all of a sudden, and that's what all of a sudden lowers the bar.
Yeah,
a parent would call in, or this. Oh, we can no longer do this.
Yeah,
and then something else happened. We can no longer do this, and then they become a little more milquetoast.
Yeah,
so you're always butting against that.
Yeah,
which is true today.
But you, I mean, I didn't necessarily know we would go there, but I love to be there for a moment, because in some ways, like, I'm looking at the future of education, and I'm always feeling to myself, if I want to be in an environment, I want to be in an environment that nurtures the qualities of each of the individuals so that they can kind of flourish in the areas that they're called to be, the areas that get them excited. And if there's anything I felt like with you was like, you were like giving me the boundaries, like, don't go too far to the left, don't go too far to the right, and it's your life. So if you do go over, then you got the consequences. I'll just say, oh, it's Andy. What can I do about it?
Yeah. That's exactly it.
Yeah, but it's not the way it works in general, because most people want the control, and they dictate, and they do the didactic training. You memorize this, and you do this, and then there's not the space to really learn and grow.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I probably learned more in your class just by you letting me mess around than I would have learned in anything I had to memorize, for sure.
Teacher's pet.
No.
Well, no, you know what? I mean, you kind of doing, I mean, it's sort of maybe an extension of your work now, sort of, inspiring people, helping them, and you just do it with different parameters. I'm sure you still do it with humor. I'm still, how to relate to an audience, meet people where they are.
Sure.
Which is part of it. So it's just sort of, it was ingrained in your personality even then, that this was something that, that you could get up in front of a group and have fun and screw with people. And the irreverency, probably even today, is a way into people.
Yeah. I've seen it as a coping mechanism.
Yeah, well, you could say it's a coping mechanism, but it's also like it's a way of really being able to see somebody.
You
It's
but
like kind of like you fuck around with them a little bit and you joke and you disarm them
mm,
for a real message,
true,
for
true.
for some for a deeper
Because
thing.
because I've always thought to myself, if it were ever to be used to manipulate in a direction that wasn't serving them, then there'd be an aspect of it that didn't feel right. You
Mm.
know?
Right. Exactly. Because sometimes you could just get anybody, not you, but anybody could get up there and just do something completely stupid, all for the ego.
Mm,
I know this will get a laugh.
yeah.
I pull my pants down or whatever, it's going to get a laugh. You know what I mean? But
Mm,
it's kind of tempering that where it's not entirely for the, it has, if you're in front of a group, it has to be somewhat, you know, you have to feel confident.
yeah.
It has to be you can't be ego driven, but you could need at least a strong ego.
Yeah. You have to be comfortable in your own skin regardless if you're gonna
Yeah.
be present. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Um,
Yeah.
I have 2
Did
things.
we kill an hour? Did we just
No,
kill an
not yet,
hour?
not yet.
Don't worry, I'm watching the time.
I'm like of 2 minds right now. I could translate into this next topic, which we're also gonna get into regardless, but I would love to spend at least 5 minutes on this radical, weird sort of intersection you made in your life to be the screenwriter of a motion picture. Is that okay with you?
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Are you
I mean,
sure you're not cringing?
I don't know if
No,
everyone knows this of you. Go ahead, sorry.
no. I don't know if there was it finished the question. It wasn't that Yeah, it was a complete radical shift. I mean, but it's sort of reflective of the rest of my life, just the way sort of things sort of evolve.
Mm.
I don't know, for Bombo's sake, I taught like I taught for like 7 years, from like 22 to 29 or something at Andy's school. And during that time, I had written a couple of children's books, Ryman Simon and the Mystery of the Fat Cat, and Ryman Simon and the Mystery of the Fake Snake. So, and so that was kind of always a dream. I always wanted to write children's books. I always kind of wanted to write. And but I was the kind of guy who liked more like having pens and pencils and notebooks. I love all the stuff that went with it. Oh, I got a new idea, but then I kind of started getting a little serious with it. And I started writing a children's book. Never thought I would write a screenplay, or never enter that world. But a friend of mine who was working in the business, and he was a line producer, meaning he produced everything below, not just produce the whole movie, but not creatively. And he wanted to get into creative producing, so he wanted to make that leap. And he was at Warner Brothers, and he was with a company where it was Mel Gibson's company at the time, and he wanted to get into that. So he said, I remember him coming by Notre Dame, that's high school anyway. So, and he, we went and met the cafeteria, got something to eat or whatever. And he goes, I got this idea for, I want to do something on rollerblades. We'll do a movie on rollerblades. He had his own pair, and he goes, they're really so big. I think we can make a movie around it. He goes, you want to write something? I go, what? I read 2 children's books. What do you write a screenplay? I don't know how. He goes, I'll give you a couple. I'll give you some screenplays. You can read it, look at it. So he gave me like 5. I read like 5 screenplays. I bought like a Sid Fields How to Write a Screenplay book, and I just sort of taught myself. Which is sort of like the opportunity would always come to me before I went. And it was like, oh God, I felt out of my league. I didn't know what I was doing, but I wrote it, and he worked on the story with me, and went to a couple of drafts, and he took it to his company, was at it, and this never happens. It got made. The first, people have a lot of screenplays done, and they make money off of it, but they don't have anything ever produced a lot of times.
Yeah.
And they're very successful. I'd be happy with that kind of career. I didn't need something produced, because that kind of always makes me feel nervous, because I'm out there, like this, I'm out here. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
probably where it all comes from. And he got it made, and it was a rollerblade movie. And then they asked me to go work on it during the in filming. They were filming it in Cincinnati, Ohio, Midwest, cold. It's like Surfer Boy goes to the Midwest,
By the
doesn't
way,
have a surfboard.
we've got the trailer. I'd love to play the
Ah,
trailer and then have a little short discussion afterwards, because that would just be too cool. So let's put that up and let's have that.
Is this thing working?
Can you hear us now?
I can't.
Let me tell you what styling is. The perfect session. A-frame wave, ground swell, spitting out salt water in your face, doing a 360 without a bounce. I call it the consciousness raiser.
Mitchell's life was a California dream. Until he woke up in Cincinnati.
What do you think? It's wild, right?
We're just so excited about having you here. Slow down a little bit, Wiley. Hands on Janet, too.
His cousin wants him to meet his friends.
You. Where do I know you from? You used to flush my head in the urinals.
They're an interesting bunch.
I could be Elvis. It's possible.
I really like to sleep, and I like Nintendo.
They all want Mitchell to feel right at home. And if it wasn't for Nikki,
How are you?
You must be getting pretty homesick, huh?
Not right now.
he'd have no reason to stay.
Man, I'm gonna throw up.
For the next 6 months, his days of sun, sand, and surf have been put on ice.
See you in school.
In a city where no one understands him,
I need traffic, smog, heat waves.
who would have thought he'd become a hero by doing what he does best?
Been challenged by the preps to a little skating race. We thought maybe you'd want to skate on our team.
No. He has one chance to prove himself. One final race to win. And he's the one who has what it takes to put them over the top. Airborne.
I think I'm starting to like Cincinnati.
So that was it.
I
I
did
mean-
all the stunts.
You did all the what?
I did all the stunts.
I'm sure you did. I mean, I have to say that it's a damn good trailer as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I want to see the movie after having watched that.
I thought you were going to show a clip because I have a cameo in it.
Do you really?
Yeah, I play the speech teacher. 'Cause I taught speech there, Bombos, in addition to the student activities. So
Did you base these students on your real life students? Like, am I emulated in any of the characters in that show?
no, but the names like Goosen is in there.
Okay.
Craig Goosen.
Yeah. Craig was on the show.
Yeah. So I named people like I loved, so I named them after certain, people,
Yeah. But they weren't necessarily based on the characters. They were just using the names.
I just like the names kind of,
Nice.
yeah.
But Andy Shalev didn't make it.
Exactly. A nice Jewish boy just didn't quite cut the. That's fun. I think I last year I wrote an opera for The Godfather, and
Oh, really?
yeah. I hadn't had any experience writing an opera, but someone like you said, "Hey, what about doing an opera?" And I thought, why not? And then all I did was got 5 operas, read through them, tried to understand the breakdown, how they're written, how long are they, what they focus on, how it's sung. And yeah. And then like you just surrendered to whatever it was going to become.
How awesome is that? How fun was that?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
We're still waiting for it to be made.
A lot of work, of course, but a lot of fun as well. Yeah.
There's something to be said for doing something out of your element. I mean, like, you're a creative person, and you have, and you're deep feelings. So you have a lot of emotions that lend itself to doing an opera.
Yeah.
But yet you don't have a lot of the technical stuff, or you got to figure out, okay, how is it structured? But being that kind of beginner who can come over and take all these other sensibilities and take it to something brand new, you don't have the limitations that someone else has because you're just kind of like making it up as you go,
Well, this kind of transitions a little bit to the topic that we at least named for this show, the elder's wisdom. And for me, there's part of that wisdom is seen similar to what you just said, that you can go into any kind of situation after you've had so much experience and say, oh, I can figure this out.
Yes, because you're liberated. You have a sense of liberation that you don't. You can make mistakes, and everything doesn't have to be perfect. That you and that you bring a lifetime of wisdom to it. Which is critical.
Yeah.
So you have all these other skills that you can bring to something. So, yeah.
It's interesting because I think I've often felt that there's we can go more into the subject of elders' wisdom and dig into it from the sort of setting it up. But I'd love just to mention this before is that it's almost like I feel there's two roads people go. Yeah, I want to sing the song. There's two roads you can go down, but in the long run, there's still time to change the road you're on.
Feel free to sing. Feel free to raise your voice and sing a little bit.
The point being that in some strange way, we can either say, okay, I've sort of done enough, or I can say, wow, I've got here and I have the freedom to do whatever I want now. And I have the sense that the Elders' Wisdom and the Elders' Wisdom Academy from Chris Connell, is that Conley? Sorry.
It's Chip Conley.
Chip Conley. Oh, Chip Conley. That you in some ways have said, hey, I'm going to explore the route of how fun is it to just reinvent yourself at any moment just because there's nothing from the past I need to define myself by. Is that sort of what you, at least, I mean, it isn't Elders' Wisdom, but there is, for me, the fact that you have Elders' Wisdom makes that possible.
Yeah, and really, I think both of them are the same choice. Like if I choose to do nothing, that is a choice, and I can afford it. So it's not like, oh, I go reinvent myself, because not doing anything for a lot of people is complete reinvention because they've been going. Now, how does somebody stop and really find peace and calm? In a way, like, some people, they come back and reinvent themselves purely as a tape from their earlier life, where it's like, okay, I'm not creating, I'm not building, I'm not acquiring, attaining. And so it's a different form. Maybe they don't have to go into the office, but if it's the same form, so a lot of that change is inner and outer. So if somebody comes to a point in their life and go, hey, I just want to go live in a van down by the river, I mean, you know what? That's a great life. And it's more about awareness and the idea that there is more, and more is like, for me, a lot of that is inner awareness. There's more. And I think for a lot of elderly people, or not, and I don't think elderly people, because elderly is a bad word. Elderly is the last few years of your life. Elder is really anyone who's older than someone who was, that, you're an elder to both of you are an elder to somebody.
Yeah.
And so it is not this, oh, elderly, like the person behind you. I mean, it could be. It could exactly be that person behind. I'm not discounting them or me or you or someone who's 25 or 45. It's just someone who has a little, beneath them. So it's interesting.
I find it kind of, first of all, it's funny. You're parroting back everything that I'm always chatting about. So I'm always sort of saying that whatever you do it consciously. So yeah, if you're happy doing nothing, then as long as it's not a reaction to something or a fight or flight reaction, but sort of being present, then that's beautiful. And
yeah, that's a good way of saying it. And and my take on getting older isn't so much about, it's not like, oh, we need better insurance, or you got to like go get a new career or a new job. I mean, that could be a part of it. For me, the angle I always like is more about the awareness part of it. It's recognizing that there's something more in the world than what you see. It's almost saying, it's like we are not human beings having, that old quote, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience, which I love. And it's not, to me, that's a liberating thought. And I think if people come to that point where they awaken to that, God, there's something more. And this slowing down of life not like, oh, slowing down because I'm getting ready to, to check out. I'm facing more mortality. I've got to slow down. I'm talking slowing down at 40, at 50, and sort of reevaluating where you were previous to your life. And that could happen. Bombos was asked, when does that start? I think before the show.
Yeah.
It's a good question, Bombos, because it's like, it comes to a point where you stop and you evaluate things. And God, if you're doing that at 35 or 40, or at any age, really, sort of saying, well, how do I kind of want to start living now? And is like, to your point, Andy, I just want to bring a little more consciousness to it.
Yeah.
So it's a different approach.
Isn't this a question that you don't have to be in the phase of elder's wisdom that you ask yourself throughout your life? Where am I going from here?
Can I say that again?
The question that you just put, where am I going from here? Isn't it something that we always ask ourselves?
Exactly. That's exactly it. And I think people who get to a certain age haven't asked themselves that. A lot of people haven't. I mean, I've been asking that question my entire life. It's changed a little bit now. I think it's gotten deepened as I've gotten older. It's taken a kind of a new dimension, and health played a role in that. I was so a little backstory. When I turned, I'm 61. I'm going to be 61 in August. When I turned 50, my 50s were not the easiest time of my life. It was, and they started off great. I was eating kale. I was moisturizing. I got serious about flossing. I even, for the first time in my life, I started exercising, and I hadn't exercised before. And it was like, I walked a block, and then I ran a block, and then I was running 2 blocks. And before I knew it, I had done a mile in 14 and 16, and then I ran a marathon. And it was like the slowest marathon you'd ever run, but I finished it. And I felt, God, I like that. I wasn't like, oh God, I'm the guy with the timer, but because that wasn't me, but it was that sense of accomplishment or that I was really taking my health under, it was other things involved. And I ran another marathon and I liked it. And then I started doing some hiking and climbing, and I ended up climbing Mount Whitney in California, which is the tallest peak in the United States, lower 48. And I felt like there was nothing I couldn't do, and I climbed it again with my son. So I was at that point, but the second time I climbed it, I was starting to get dizzy at the top of the mountain, and I thought it was because I'm at 14,000 feet and it's like this, and I'm afraid of heights. So it's like, I'm like, but then I felt a little dizziness, and, it wasn't the altitude. I found out that I had Meniere's disease, but I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's what Huey Lewis has. If you heard, the rock guy, it's an inner ear thing where you get vertigo. Like, the room would spin for like a day, and I would be knocked out for a week from it. I'd be crawling to the bathroom, and that would periodically go on. And it's accompanied with hearing loss, dizziness, tinnitus, all these other things. So it kind of wreaked havoc on my life, Fast forward, I guess this is the longer version of this, but fast forward a year, and they found an acoustic neuroma in my other ear, it was a benign thing, but they didn't want to touch it because of, I had hearing loss in this ear, and they were worried, but eventually it started like pressing against the brain. So they go, we got to get rid of this. So they were able to remove it. But in the process, I lost like 90% of my hearing in this year, which if you combine with the hearing, I've lost it. I have marginal in this year. It's, I was officially hearing impaired, which essentially means so if I laugh at your jokes, don't necessarily think you're funny. Okay. Because
funny looking.
Yeah, exactly. So, sometimes, I can hear just fine now, but sometimes I'm in a room and I kind of have to, kind of read the room. Hopefully they didn't just say that, their grandmother got hit by a truck. I'm hoping I'm not, oh, that's good, all kidding aside, I went in the period of just a couple of years, I went from feeling like a 10 to like a 2.
Wow.
And for the first time in my life, I came face to face with age, and it wasn't, for me, it just wasn't about health or hearing or balance. It was about, how was I going to make a living? How was I going to rebuild my business? How was I going to stay relevant, engaged, creative, excited about life? I went from feeling like anything was possible to all of a sudden it was like, I didn't, all I saw were my limitations, and I didn't, I had like the awareness to at least be able to see, I don't want to live like this. I'm not sure what I can do with my health, and, my health's improved to a great degree. I still have its challenges, but I knew I didn't want to live that way. And my response is usually to write about it, shift gears. I was working on another site, other 999 rooms, which is something I did for years, which was based on the idea we live in a house with 1,000 rooms, but we only live in one. My site was about the other 999 rooms, and I loved it. But all of a sudden, I felt I wanted to write about something different. I wanted to write. So I started Oxygen Buzz, turning age into art. Living creative. Yeah, and living a creative and awakened life. I wanted the word awakened in it for me, because I wanted my writing to reflect the way I wanted to live. And so it was like, and then there's 50 million people who are over 50, and I think they need, and I wanted to work with, for people who wanted to reframe what it meant to get aging. Because, it's kind of get to the point where, I see, they put this, but like the downside of aging, is not so much that I think that our bodies get old or they can no longer do what they once could for us. I'm not as fast as I used to be. I'm not as articulate as I used to be. I struggled for words, or what was I going to say, but it's not about that. It's keeping an enthusiasm, a curiousness for life, and that's what I need. I started to realize I didn't need to run another marathon. That was for a different experience. It's like writing a screenplay at the time. That was to get me to a stage where I had control over my body. I could, I didn't need to climb a mountain, be the wittiest guy in a room, smartest guy in the room, the cleverest guy, the one who always had the one-liners. I didn't need to be that anymore. I think part of aging was realizing that there was so much more that I could bring to a room, and it had, and it has to, being a more authentic person, being a more vulnerable person. And I think these are qualities that you get as you get older. Hopefully you become a little more vulnerable, that you don't have to put on this facade. You can just be a little more yourself, a little more authentic. And really, that's what people really want. Or it's really the people that I want to be around,
Bill,
want, So I mean, that's the long way of getting saying what brought me to that moment.
I have a question. I want to backtrack a little bit. You said a lot, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah, probably too much. I didn't mean to wrap. Is it an hour yet?
No, we would have stopped you if it was.
I wish you had stopped me.
We don't allow filibustering on this show. There's no filibustering. We would have stopped
you. We're not so nice. So
we would have cut you off if you were boring, for sure. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
So when you were talking about you were at a 10, how like my mind was like, oh, I know people around that age that try to do a lot of other things, but in my mind it was midlife crisis. So would you say that was a little bit intertwined?
No, and the midlife crisis to me is a reaction. I mean, you're filling a void, So if you're feeling a void, I mean, I wouldn't blame anyone for having a midlife crisis. Use whatever words you want to use to describe something. But if you shift and you sense something's different, and God, I got to change this. I don't like the way something's working. And, this, and if you just fill that void with a new red Ferrari, that's something different. You're filling a void to maybe mask what's really happening, without having a psychology degree here, but it just seems that's a truth that seems real to me. So, but even if they have to buy a Ferrari and go on a trip and and leave their wife or do whatever they need to do, if that's the experience they need, and it gets to the next point, even they have to go through all that struggle, all for it. For me, it was just I get healthy, and then it became something I really liked. The running, it gave me something structure. So I really like that. I like goals. I'm always kind of goal driven. So this was different kind of goals than I have been used to my whole life. They're all business goals. They're all like, oh, I got to get in business. I want to get a new website. I want to, this more clients, that more clients. So this was something that had no intrinsic growth. I mean, outside intrinsic, it was just all for me, about me getting healthier, improving, running a little further. It was for me, I said that how I ran a block or 2 blocks, that was symbolic for me, because I saw, oh, look what happens when you go a block and then you go 3 blocks and then you go. So it was a symbolic thing for me to get to that point. Now, the second one could have been obsessive. The second, climbing the mountain, could have been like, okay, did you need to do that a second time? Why did you do that? If I thought about it even more, maybe why? I don't want to ever climb that mountain again.
If you follow your logic, then it would also stand true. You needed to do it a second time to discover that you didn't need to do it anymore.
Bingo. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was at that time where I was brought to my knees. So if I really fall.
I was wondering with Bambos, because you asked a question. I wasn't quite sure. It didn't necessarily sound like the reaction was in response to the question. I'm not sure.
No, I was satisfied though. It was in relation to him, and it was clear.
Because in some ways, when we're talking about, I find it interesting because it's always about the filter you look through life. So if we take the paradigm of life right now in the industrialized world, we go to a education system, reading, writing, arithmetic. It's a system that we bought into, when the Industrial Revolution happened, and we feed people into the factories that don't exist anymore. Right. But now they're in the world, and now they're trying to create work, and that work often isn't there. And they're sold on the vision that if you just work hard enough till you're 50, then you can do what you really want to do. Like after you're done slaving away at a job you're not really happy in, then you can do what you want to do. And you go ahead.
Yeah. And that old paradigm of learn, earn, retire, that's gone, because people are living longer. That's part of it. And the economic things that people are having to start something brand new at 60 and 65, and they have to figure out, well, I don't have retirement. I have to do something. So I got to go back to work. How do I stay engaged? So part of, aging well, or whatever you want to call it, being a modern elder, whatever you want to call it, is about learning to stay relevant.
Yeah.
It's about relevancy. And what does that change at your age, at 50? You still trying to steal a bit?
When
40 or 30, whatever.
If you look at this right now, I mean, doing this thing, Ronnie was, I wrote the next book will be out in a few weeks. And Ronnie was like, why are you doing this? And I think I kind of didn't say to stay relevant, but I kind of did. I was like, babe, this is just staying in the game. This is just continuing, keeping my chips on the table. I'm not ready to pull my chips off the table and go home and say, okay, I haven't had my go at this.
Oh, I had a different idea why you did it.
Oh, what was that?
You wanted to leave a legacy. Like contribute before you.
I mean, everything I do is in contribution, but not all that dissimilar from what we were discussing earlier. I can go live on a farm and take care of the land and see that as contribution as well. So if contribute, the one thing I learned from the trip, the last letter trip, with the 60 sessions and going and crying on each session and being fully vulnerable and allowing people, was like, oh, this is another trap I've just got myself into. Life has meaning if you if you go to this deep self-sacrifice. And I'm like, oh my God, that was like almost, I would almost say like one of the later, I don't want to say last, because there's always other pennies or shoes that drop, but that was a big one for me, because I'm like, wow, what if life didn't have a purpose? What if I didn't need to do big extravagant events and hold space for people and give them a loving experience so that my life had meaning?
Yeah. But just that you said that you could go do it on a farm as well.
Yeah, but I had to go through that experience in order to get there.
Yes. Yeah. And then now you see it's a complete choice. Well, you know what? I could go do that farm and be of service, but yet you choose to do it here.
Is there a third book? If the third book would be like, because the books are kind of going chronologically, and it would be the year after I came back, or the entire year, I was in a dark night of the soul, because after I finished the tour, giving basically all of my life's blood into something, only to realize at the back end of it, wow, what if life didn't have purpose? What if I didn't need to make everything have purpose in order for me to be at peace? And that was a existential. I wouldn't even know if it was existential. It was sitting in the depth of that pain for a year, and Ronnie holding my hand.
And you emerged from it with what realization? How did you emerge out of it with what thought or thinking or belief?
I think what happens on each one of those is that, why does it matter? Why does that question actually even matter? I think that's what came out of it. Like, what is it that I think I need to answer in anything? What if I just was happy with this very moment and present with you, and, for instance, our podcast at this moment? And
which is what you totally get with this podcast. It is totally, and I think why you guys are really good at it is because you know how to listen. And you also have really appreciative inquiry. You have just a way of like asking questions that kind of like make somebody feel safe, but it totally requires presence. So it's like, regardless of how busy in your life, this is a place where you come, and it's almost like a meditation for 60 minutes. You have to be completely sort of in the flow, and regardless of whether this is just Andy talking to one person because it's somebody he brought on from high school, or whether it's, one of your friends who Andy calls odd, or whatever.
Yeah.
Hey,
but it's still a presence, and it's
we have a guy that's coming on in a few weeks. He's doing the animations for The Nightmare Before Christmas. He's kind of the head of production for those shows, a lot of these stop animation films. And he wrote me this morning, or last night, he said, Andy, just to let you know, are you going to make me cry? Like, that was the only thing. Like, he's like, and then he writes me this word, and because he I could tell when people are a little bit more anxious coming on, and he writes me a word that I didn't even know. I had to look it up, because he says, your show reminds me of, it was called cocaine. Cocaine. Do you know this word? Cocaine?
Yes.
Cocaine.
Spell it.
I can't. Oh, COCKAIGNE. And he
Never
said,
heard of it.
Oh, good, because then he says, and I had to look it up, and I even had to go to Google, say it properly, right? Because I didn't even know how to say it. And it says, Andy, your show is like, and this is what I'm going to read out, is like a land of plenty in medieval myth, an imaginary place of extreme luxury and ease, where physical comforts and pleasures are always immediately at hand, and where the harshness of medieval peasant life does not exist.
That's great, though. That is awesome. I couldn't imagine. I would take that as a compliment. I hope you took it as a compliment.
I mean, I took it as a compliment, but it was almost like, wow. So basically, we're in this vortex of an alternate reality of just being present with people while the world around them is falling apart, because that's whatever the peasant life is in this definition here.
Well, I interpret that as that it's funny. It even ties into your name that there is a sort of a lot of chaos in the world outside. It just and in a lot of different ways, and not just the ways that are just obvious and visible and you could go to right away, but just in the busyness of people's lives
Yeah.
and the a million different ways.
Yeah.
And that there is that focus right here, and that just that presence to have a conversation.
Right.
I mean, because I'd watched like several of the shows, but I watched the one from Craig Goosen yesterday, and I remember telling Terry afterwards, I go, they're both so just present in the moment, and they ask really good questions, and because she knew I was really nervous about it, I go, they ask really good questions, and they listen, and they let people go, and then they know when to stay. They have a really good sense, and that is empathy. That's part empathy. It's part listening. It's part knowing when there's a good story, knowing, it's just knowing when to pull the brakes and when to put the accelerator on. And you have that inbred into your personalities, into your DNA. So I came in, I said, all right, I feel a little bit better. I just feel
A little
better.
bit.
I was going to say, you've only got 10 minutes left, so you already can take a deep breath.
Okay.
Bill,
And I noticed you never go under.
No.
Yeah. So
There's a few times I've asked. I listened to one recording when we were only starting and we really didn't quite know. And then I asked Bambos on air, I said, so Bambos, do you have any more questions? And then so Ronnie was listening to the recording and she says, Andy, I assumed you were getting bored with that interview.
No. That's Andy trying to create space for me.
Yeah.
But I'm going to take the space now. Bill, I'm always fascinated about how the mind tells me I can't do something, and how I need to like block that story out and just keep moving forward. And I was curious. So let's say you're between the age of 50 and 60, you're going climbing, you're scared of heights, so what was a story that you needed to overcome internally to keep climbing? Was there an internal dialogue there? And how did you navigate it at this age as opposed to when you were younger? They're just taking.
Well, I think no, it's a really good question. I love that question.
You had 3 questions though. That was the only thing.
Yeah.
So stay with the one.
You know what? To me, they just seem like one. So I don't.
Yeah.
That's my mind.
I took my chance and put everything in one.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to climbing, I felt that was sort of like, okay, mind over matter, one step foot, blah, blah, blah. And it's just sort of a bit of willpower and not listening to your body. It's very physical. And it was sort of like, and like running, it's like, I can do this. And you just, you kind of just talk yourself into it. So it's a willpower thing. So I separate that a little bit, because the bigger challenges were, and are, when you want to do something and the mind comes in and says, you're too old, or you're going to start something all over again. Here you go again. You're going to do something, that's when the mind comes in, or you can't do this, because there's some doubts about, like, I have doubts, like, this goes to your question where it's like, God, can I still do that? I don't write the same because words don't come to me quite the same as fast as they used to. Something that used to take me an hour to write, it takes me 4 days, 5 days, I tend to, when I blog, it takes me a couple of weeks because I'm also learning a truth when I do it. Even if it's a silly topic, there's a truth behind it. So it's finally something I kind of want to come in when I already know the truth so I can write it faster. But I have a lot of, tapes that come in. I think with age, I quiet them because I think the mind is a lot of your ego. It is the ego telling your little self can't do this. You're in your mind. It's kind of really, how do you get rid of the mind? You get out of your mind, and the mind is all your ego. So you have to get out of your ego. So it's like you've got to start, and it goes back to the original question, or we're talking about awareness, where not to get too esoterical, but where you are the awareness looking at the mind and the ego. So I think as I age, I look down at the mind a little bit more and smile. What are you thinking about? This is, come on, this is bullshit. I mean, this isn't you. I say more often than now, this isn't you. And it's those gaps, how fast you catch yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it might be a month. Now the gaps are like 5 minutes, a minute, sometimes
Yeah.
almost instantaneously. And the shorter you get the gaps, the less time there is for the mind to do damage, to stop you from doing things.
Beautiful.
So the answer, I fill the gaps as quickly as I can.
Yeah, I've always described that as well. Like I was said, I related especially with my dad, because when I had my contact with him after years of maybe not speaking, then it like took me maybe 6 months to recover from it because it was so emotionally draining and it took so much out of me. And then in time, it took a week, it took 5, and then till it got to that very moment when he'd say something that would normally have set me off, and then I could actually hold compassion for him, because at that point I was actually only defending myself. It was a very different reaction. And I see that in all aspects of my life. He was an external voice, of course, but the internal voice is like, oh, I always say, when I was doing the last letter tour, I'd always say to people, okay, if you don't know who to write, then think of the person that you're most frightened to write and just write them. Like that was what I would invite them to do. And
it's really yourself. I mean, really, your dad's just a mirror for what's going on in your world. So you can say it's an external, this was outside myself, but it's really not, that. So
yeah, that's beautiful. And that's where it went, by the way, which is very curious, is that I stopped having people write to individuals as I intended, because that essence, I was trying to get people to write like I wrote to my mom before she died. So what I did was I said, actually, very early on, I realized there's a limitation in that, because now I'm imposing something where another individual might have the hardest person for them to get along with as a person in their head. So I had a lot of people writing, and as soon as I didn't put the caveat of instruction towards another, I had a lot of people writing letters to themselves, and those were some of the most beautiful letters you could imagine.
I got goosebumps.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
I got goosebumps.
Yeah, and that scene. I mean, that's something we talk about a lot. I wrote quite a bit about it in the first book as well. Was that the moment when I no longer felt like I was only Andy, but there was a seer as well as a beer. There was this guy who did stupid stuff, and then there was this other observer of him, almost loving how like a parent might love a child, like, oh, such a sweet kid,
Yeah, because you're being gentle to yourself.
Yeah.
So you're simultaneously being gentle to your human form, also honoring your higher form, who's looking, who's saying you don't even need to be gentle to yourself, but smiling that's a nice gesture. You're living in your physical body, and as long as you're here in your physical body, you should be kind to your physical body. You should be kind to others. We're in this world, so you're doing two things at the same time,
Yeah.
And this is something that I knew. These are truths that I had at a very young age. I was very fortunate to come to these truths at a young age, and you get busy in life that take you away from what really is truth, because they don't. When you're in that earlier part of your life, it's about acquire and attain, and mortgages and this and settling in. When like if you could go back and tell your younger self something, and you say, well, honoring that self early not only makes for a happier life, but it will also serve your physical life here too. It'll make you better in business, better in whatever career choices you take, life partners, all that stuff. It's practical.
Yeah.
And yet, but that practicality is, you got to kind of get through them. Oh, it's practical. You'll make more money doing this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's sort of funny. It's inverse thinking. And I have a lot of time challenges with that. And we're going to have another show on this more Eastern and this Western philosophy, the Eastern being more, let's be in touch with this moment and more at peace with everything that is. And the Western being more, what's success? How do I get free? How do I get incremental income that's coming in passively? Like that's very much these focuses of courses and trainings. And
right.
And what I'm always laughing at is that either one actually is limited in the sense that if you're trying to get achieve, right? If you'd like to achieve, if you're Buddha on the mountain, you might be happy, but you'll still be conflicted at times because you'll say, well, actually, I actually also want to be achieving this, which is what I often see with yoga instructors or people that give trainings. They're like, let me find peace with what is, but I need you to buy my services. Otherwise I'm not happy.
Right. But, there is a merging of the two where,
Of course.
that, and it's funny because people who often have a spiritual service or a yoga, or they do inner work, a lot of times they have the most trouble marketing themselves, just from a purpose point of view, because it feels antithesis. And I'll always argue that, if you have something, if you come from a pure heart and you have the right intent and you have someone's interest in mind, the world needs what you have. And you offer a disservice by not presenting that in a way that feels right with you. If you don't want to ask the business, you don't have to. And we live in a physical world, and getting paid for something and is just, it's give and take. It's all how you do it. So it's like,
We're not here just for love and rainbows. I mean, money is also an energy, right?
It is an energy, exactly, and it's neither good or bad. It just depends the intent you put into it.
In the spiritual world, sex and money are the hang-ups. Whatever anyone's done on the back end of all their work, like sex and money are those two topics that just all the hang-ups come in,
I think we should do another talk on that.
Yeah, sex and money.
So, Bill and Andy, we have come to the end of our time.
Did you survive? How did it feel? You were worried about it. Was it easier? It was like a shot that actually...
Well, I knew, like I said, I knew when I watched, I knew that, I was in good hands, and I knew that you guys are really good at what you do. And I appreciate your questions. I thought they were, they were great. And you know what? I enjoyed it. So
yes, that's our criteria. That's the criteria.
Yes.
I feel we didn't really go as deep as I would have liked. Like through the journey of you guys catching up, I was like having 100 questions in me. So we probably want to do Embracing Elders take 2.
Well, anytime you guys want, now I'm a fan. So
I love it.
Great.
Whenever you want.
Love it. That was just to say, I told Ronnie, like, my biggest criteria on if it was a good show or not is if the people that were on the show enjoyed being there. Because if they enjoyed being there, then that for me was it should be an hour that we enjoyed each other's company. And
because you made them feel like they were they have something to say and they're heard. You made them feel heard. You make someone feel heard, and everyone likes that. When you were talking to Craig Goosen yesterday, you could see, or not yesterday, but what I watched yesterday, you could see it in his face that he was enjoying going the places that you were taking him. And then when you would shift to another direction, and I see this in other interviews where you shift somewhere, you could see, oh, okay, we're going there now, or you stay with somebody and one line of pattern. You don't try to make it something that you thought it was going to be.
Oh yeah.
So I tip my hat to you guys, and thank you for thank you for your.
For those that are listening, then they can see your work at oxygenbuzz.com, I'm guessing.
Yeah. You guessed correctly.
Oxygenbuzz.com. Thank you.
And probably in another month, it'll be something entirely different. So
I know, that's the beauty of life, isn't it? You get to decide whatever you want to be at the moment you're there.
It is.
Love you, my friend.
Bye-bye.
All right. Love you guys. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Sorry, you still got high school and, maybe some college friends that are going to come on down the road.
I don't think so.
Oh, no? No, for me, I mean.
Huh?
I'll invite some more college or high school friends on. So you'll have a few more high school reunions to go through before we burn through all those. It was beautiful. I mean, what's nice is that as we were speaking, I felt that Bill and I, we hadn't spoken in so long, but I heard my words coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
So when he talks about elder wisdom, it's quite funny because I think even sometimes when I would ask a question, I'd almost hear his answer and said, actually, it wasn't really a good question, because I would have answered it the same way. Right? Like this idea that we project elders as someone old, when in actually it's someone that has sort of had an experience that's beyond our own. Doesn't even need to be age specific. It can be anyone with an experience which informs their world and their life in a way where we can learn and grow from it. And I'm often thinking to myself, and it's often very frustrating for me when I see people be so dismissive of others, maybe because they don't have a degree or they don't have anything they've projected as giving them an elevated status. When I'm always thinking I can learn from anyone I meet. And actually the joy is in someone who has such a different background than that of my own, because it means they have an experience which I might not even have any comprehension of in my life. And that gives me a whole different prism to look through the world. So in some beautiful way, when he said that elders is not about age, it really hit me. It's true. Elders is really about individuals in our life who create some space for us to learn and grow, because they introduce things we didn't understand before. Yeah. They have an awareness that we don't yet have, and they give us an opportunity to learn through their awareness, and so we don't have to make the same mistakes.
Well, that's why I hang out with you, right?
So you don't have to make the same mistakes I made? Nice. We've got some shows coming up.
Okay, I'm not gonna answer. Go for it.
You can go.
No, actually, I need to leave.
Oh, you need to look. Oh,
so let's.
We have tomorrow. We've got 5 p.m. We've got Donna Bearden, Journaling to the Soul. She has a new book, and we're going to discuss that with her. Journaling is a big deal.
Exciting.
Kathy Delhante on Friday is Life on a String. She basically has an incredibly beautiful story. A friend died. The husband of that friend said, "Hey, I've got a closet full of yarn." She received 7 bags of yarn. And then from that moment, she now has become the largest knitting community for the homeless in the world. So she's homeless. She's knitting on a scale with just massive amounts of people that are participating.
Nice.
So and then I get my fun on Sunday. I've been just doing the show one man on Sunday. Free hugs. We're gonna play his video with the sick puppies in it, because it was maybe 13 or 14 years ago. It touched me on such a level then. And I believe this man was so far ahead of his time that it's only now that it's become so commonplace. But to stand on the street and give someone a hug would have been considered a crazy act.
Or a crime.
In which it was. It was banned from where he did it. So it was banned, and then he had to basically get a petition. So he was really leading the way in this new understanding that human touch is important. We can't just shut down emotionally. So we've got 4 more shows for you this week. 3 more this week. And and
Sundays at 12, yeah?
And Sundays at 12. Thank you for...
Have a beautiful evening, guys.
Thank you for joining us this week. Wonderful Chaos. Bye.